The famous Joplin showdown in 1933 marked a significant turning point in the criminal careers of Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, two of the most notorious outlaws of the Great Depression era. By this time, Bonnie and Clyde had gained a reputation for their violent crimes, daring robberies, and brazen escapes from law enforcement. The Joplin, Missouri shootout is often remembered not just for the violence that unfolded, but also for the way it exposed Bonnie and Clyde's criminal network to the wider public. Background: the rise of Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde came from humble beginnings, each raised in the unforgiving poverty of rural Texas. They met in 1930, and despite Bonnie's initial reluctance to engage in criminal activity, her devotion to Clyde soon bound her to his dangerous lifestyle. The two embarked on a spree of thefts, robberies, and murders that captured the attention of the nation during the Great Depression, a time when the public was often captivated by the idea of outlaws sticking it to the establishment. Clyde, a petty thief in his younger years, had long harbored a desire for revenge against the Texas prison system after being subjected to brutal treatment during his time in prison. His motivation, coupled with Bonnie's loyalty, fueled a crime spree that would soon terrorize the southern United States. As the Barrow gang grew, Clyde's brother Buck Barrow and his wife Blanche joined the couple, along with other criminals who would drift in and out of the gang's activities. By the time of the Joplin showdown, Bonnie and Clyde had already been involved in several murders, including those of law enforcement officers. They were on the run from the law, moving from hideout to hideout, their faces now known to lawmen across several states. The Joplin hideout. In early 1933, Bonnie and Clyde, along with Buck and Blanche Barrow and their associate W.D. Jones, were laying low in a rented apartment in Joplin, Missouri. The gang had retreated to Joplin to rest and regroup after a series of small robberies and a run-in with law enforcement. The Joplin apartment, a small garage-style unit, was in a quiet suburban neighborhood, an unlikely place to hide a gang of hardened criminals. Their time in Joplin, however, did not go unnoticed. The gang's peculiar behavior raised suspicions among the locals. Though they claimed to be ordinary travelers, their late-night comings and goings, frequent car repairs, and general nervous demeanor set them apart from regular tenants. Neighbors noted that they rarely left the apartment during the day, but when they did, they moved quickly and secretively. The final straw came when the gang shot at a neighboring house's chickens, likely out of boredom. The suspicious activities prompted the neighbors to alert local authorities, suspecting that the group might be involved in bootlegging or other illegal activities. What the local lawmen didn't know, however, was that they were about to engage in a firefight with one of the most dangerous criminal outfits in the country. The showdown on April 13, 1933, 5 Joplin police officers, along with a detective, arrived at the apartment complex to investigate the suspicious tenants. They had no idea they were about to face Bonnie, Clyde, and the Barrow gang. The officers likely expected to find bootleggers or petty criminals, not heavily armed killers with a history of violence. As the officers approached, Clyde Barrow spotted them from a window and immediately opened fire. The Barrow gang was armed to the teeth with automatic weapons, shotguns, and pistols. Clyde, known for his quick reflexes and sharp aim, unleashed a barrage of bullets. The officers were taken by surprise, finding themselves pinned down by the gang's firepower. In the chaos that followed, the officers tried to take cover while returning fire. Detective Harry McGinnis and Constable J.W. Harriman were killed in the initial exchange of gunfire. McGinnis was shot in the head by Clyde, while Harriman was gunned down as he attempted to escape the deadly crossfire. Inside the apartment, Bonnie, Clyde, Buck, Blanche, and W.D. Jones scrambled to defend their position and plan their escape. Blanche Barrow, the least experienced of the group in criminal activity, was terrified, screaming and pleading with the others to flee. Bonnie, while equally shaken, stayed close to Clyde, preparing to make a run for it. Clyde's expert driving skills once again came to the gang's rescue. As the police struggled to regroup and gain control of the situation, Clyde and Buck grabbed the gang's firearms, threw them into their car, and sped out of the garage. The officers, still reeling from the shock of the firefight, were unable to stop the gang as they fled the scene. The Barrow gang managed to escape Joplin, but the cost had been high. They had killed 2 lawmen and were now the subject of an intense manhunt. Worse for the gang, they had left behind a trove of critical evidence that would further cement their infamy. The aftermath, a trail of infamy. In their haste to flee, the Barrow gang left behind a significant amount of personal belongings, including weapons, a handwritten poem by Bonnie, and most crucially, a camera loaded with undeveloped film. When the police developed the photos, they found a series of images showing Bonnie and Clyde posing with weapons, laughing, and enjoying the spoils of their criminal life. One of the most famous photos showed Bonnie holding a shotgun and a cigar in her mouth, an image that would forever be etched into the public consciousness. These photos were published widely across the nation, turning Bonnie and Clyde into media sensations. While they had already gained a level of notoriety for their crimes, the photos brought a new level of fame to the couple. They were no longer just faceless criminals on the run. They were now larger-than-life figures, romanticized by the public as outlaws living on the edge of society. The Joplin showdown also marked a turning point in law enforcement's efforts to capture the gang. The deaths of the 2 lawmen intensified the manhunt for Bonnie and Clyde, with local and federal authorities now working together to bring the gang to justice. The Barrow gang would continue their crime spree for another year, but the Joplin incident made it clear that their days were numbered. Checked. The legacy of the Joplin showdown. The Joplin showdown remains one of the most infamous episodes in Bonnie and Clyde's criminal career. It highlighted the recklessness and desperation of the Barrow gang, as well as the growing danger they posed to law enforcement. The deaths of Detective McGinnis and Constable Harriman were a stark reminder that Bonnie and Clyde were not just folk heroes to be admired, but cold-blooded killers who would stop at nothing to evade capture. In the broader context of Bonnie and Clyde's story, the Joplin incident marked the beginning of the end. While they managed to escape that day, the events in Joplin left a trail of evidence that would follow them until their eventual deaths in a hail of bullets in 1934. The photos and personal items left behind humanized the couple in the eyes of the public, but they also gave law enforcement crucial insight into the gang's movements and connections. For many, the Joplin showdown also symbolizes the romanticized myth of the outlaw couple, living free from the constraints of society and the law. However, the reality was far less glamorous. Bonnie and Clyde lived a life of constant fear, violence, and uncertainty. The shootout in Joplin was just one of many violent encounters they would face as they sped toward their inevitable demise. Chapel. Conclusion. The Joplin showdown was a pivotal moment in the saga of Bonnie and Clyde. It exposed them to the nation in a way they had never been before, both as dangerous criminals and as human beings. The photographs left behind at the scene helped immortalize them in American popular culture, but the violence of the showdown also underscored the brutal reality of their lives on the run. While Bonnie and Clyde's crime spree would continue for another year, the Joplin incident marked the beginning of the end for the infamous duo.